If you've not heard of Bilderberg, where you been? Bilderberg is to Davos what Al-Qaeda is to ISIS. They're the OGs, and it's time for the first Bilderberg meeting since the pandemic. World leaders, CEOs, big tech and big business all getting together. Finally, a chance for a globalist solution. Just what we've been waiting for. Hello, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on this voyage towards truth, discovery, personal autonomy, and collective freedom. How are we going to get there? Don't know yet. It's quite a tricky subject. If you don't subscribe to this channel yet, why don't you subscribe now? And there's a link in the description to this one-day event we're doing with Wim Hof and Vandana Shiva and other great thinkers as we come together to explore ideas around community and how we might do things differently. And also, any money we make, we're giving it to charity. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, why don't you come? Certainly, it'll be better than going to the Bilderberg Group, which you ain't allowed to go to anyway, because it's probably really expensive to go. We did a video recently on Davos and how expensive it is to turn up at the WEF and Klaus's little party. They don't come for free, baby. My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. Bilderberg, if you've not heard of it, because it's maybe it's less well known now, that's what Davos used to be in the good old days when CEOs and presidents could come together with a little bit of discretion. Well, they're meeting for the first time. What's their agenda? What are they going to do when they get together? And do you think that the world's most powerful people coming together at secret conferences or even clandestine or somewhat opaque conferences is the solution to the problems of ordinary people? Let's get into it. Bilderberg is back with a vengeance. That's not the right attitude. After a pandemic gap of 2 years, the Elite Global Summit is being rebooted in a security-drenched hotel in Washington, D.C. When I hear the words Elite Global Summit, I think that might not be the best solution to the world's problems, because I think elite global summits have caused all these problems. Is being rebooted in a security-drenched hotel in Washington, D.C. with a high-powered guest list that includes the heads of NATO, the CIA, GCHQ, the US National Security Council, 2 European prime ministers, tech billionaires, and Henry Kissinger. When you hear that guest list, it makes you wonder why there's so many conspiracy theories attached to the Bilderberg Group and Davos. What? Just because the CIA, NATO, GCHQ, the US National Security Council, some European prime ministers, tech billionaires, and Henry Kissinger getting together, you get suspicious. We were all getting together for a surprise birthday party with the Bilderberg Group. We're actually going to build you a bear. You still think about Bilderberg. Be honest, don't you? When you Bilderberg, you still think about Bilderberg. Grow up. What a difference 2 years have made. The Western world order, which the Bilderberg Group has been quietly nudging into shape for the best part of 70 years, is in all kinds of flux. Back in 2019, the last time Bilderberg met in the flesh, human flesh, the conference kicked off with the topics of a stable strategic order and what's next for Europe. This year, however, top of the schedule is global realignments followed by NATO challenges. Why are we continually dogged with these rumors that we're trying to create a global new order? We're just some tech billionaires, the heads of the CIA, GCHQ, some prime ministers, and Henry Kissinger just getting together to discuss global realignment around some hot chocolate, some marshmallows, a statue of an owl, in our robes with our friends from outer space. Global realignment is not a term that's reassuring after you've experienced a couple of years of technocratic enforcement, lockdowns issued from on high, continual suggestions of social credit-like systems that may have begun as measures to ensure the health of a population, but seem to be muting into a means to track, observe, and control a population. To be sure, the Washington Conference is a high-level council of war headlined by the Secretary-General of NATO, Bilderberg veteran Jens Stoltenberg. He's joined at the luxurious Mandarin Oriental Hotel by the Ukrainian ambassador to the US, Oksana Markarova, and the CEO of Naftogaz, the state-owned Ukrainian oil and gas company. Bloody hell. I mean, it does make you wonder if there is an agenda. I don't want to be glib and reductive about that awful ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. And I don't want to say anything that in any way dilutes or belittles or diminishes the impact of Putin on global politics and the horror he must have wreaked on the people of Ukraine. But when you hear that the Bilderberg Group are meeting up and there's ambassadors for the US, there's a Ukrainian ambassador and a Ukrainian oil and gas company there, you do think, do you reckon they'll discuss business at all? They'll be clinking bespoke cocktails in the Empress Lounge. Nice. with some of the Allied war effort's leading lights, among them Chrystia Freeland. Now, I've remembered her name because she's got the world's most sarcastic name. Chrystia Freeland sounds like someone that should be in Lord of the Rings looking after the hobbits after they've had a terrible day. But what she'd actually do if she met a hobbit is freeze its bank account and tell it to stop making so much noise. Yeah, but we want to go out and about on the Shires. Get back in your fucking hobbit, huh? Because, of course, Chrystia Freeland is one of them people that passed through Davos and came to your attention, most likely, when she imposed all them emergency type orders in Canada without revoking them. What we continually talk about on this channel, and I believe along with some pretty other significant thinkers on the, ironically, global stage, that decentralization is the most important thing we can be discussing right now. Real democracy. Real democracy means that the decisions that affect your life are as close to you as possible, ideally made by you. And unless the decisions you make are negatively impacting other people, then why would that not be the case? The problem with centralization is it takes power, it takes the possibility of choice, therefore, further and further away from you. The real problem with the Bilderberg meeting up at some fancy hotel with Chrystia Freeland and Henry Kissinger and people that have got interest in Ukrainian gas and oil is it means that the amount of money you pay for gas or petrol, depending on where you're from, and the way that your country is governed when there is a pandemic or an outbreak of a disease, and the amount of money you pay for your property and the way your democracy operates is going to be taken out of your hands. The participant list is rife with military advisors, one of which is a former chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff and some hefty cogs from the Washington war machine. Look at the ingredients of this conference. Military advisors, energy companies, politicians, tech companies. Do you think they're all doing it in order to do nothing? Right, let's just go to that conference and then we'll just go home again. They're not skiing and like paddleboarding and stuff. They're going to be talking about their shared interests, forming and cementing relationships and coming up with ideas that will ultimately impact all of your lives. What I dislike about the way that the media render stories like the Ukraine-Russia war is, oh, this is just this isolated thing. Russia done this, Ukraine responded. Now we're just going to go and help. Put a sticker in your window, will ya? That's the best thing. Like, clearly these things are connected by the interwoven cartilage of political ideologies and economic necessity and economic ambition. You can observe the influence and shadow of these matters within the confines of this conference. Bilderberg is sometimes dismissed as a talking shop or a crazed imagining of conspiracy theorists. Well, of course it is, because you have to be dismissive about things like this, otherwise it attracts too much scrutiny. But in reality, it's a major diplomatic summit attended this year, as ever, by extremely senior transatlantic politicians from the US Commerce Secretary to the President of the European Council. Many consider it an older, less flashy Davos. Davos? Huh, that's a bit of Revis, isn't it? A bit vulgar, a bit flash. I prefer Bilderberg, very much a Rolls Royce to your Tesla. Staged annually by the World Economic Fund. The two events have a good bit in common, namely 3 WEF trustees at this year's conference, and Klaus Schwab, the grisly head of Davos, is a former member of Bilderberg's steering committee. Even when it comes to, like, global conferences, even they ain't independent. Even they are cooperating with each other. You can't even have independence when it comes to globalist conspiracies. Should we team up and do this globalist conspiracy together? Oh yes, I'd like that very much. Do you think when Klaus Schwab used to go to Bilderberg as a lowly delegate, he used to just sit at the back thinking, one day, Klaus, climb the ladder, Klaus, climb the ladder. Soon we will have our own globalist elite conference. And then I'll finally be able to afford a cat. Schwab's Great Reset looms large over the Washington conference, with disruption of the global financial system at the heart of the agenda. I imagine when they say disruption of the global financial system, it's how do we stop it, rather than, yeah! The conference troubled some ethicists, with politicians thrashing out an energy security and sustainability talk with the CEOs of oil giants BP, Shell and Total. There's also post-pandemic health, with the CEOs of Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline who are locked away for days. Let's see how they like it, with Wall Street investors and no press scrutiny. This is Albert Bourla, CEO of Pfizer, laughing at conspiracy theories.
By FBI. So...
But look, the CEOs of Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline will be locked away for days with Wall Street investors and no press scrutiny. What do you imagine they're going to do in there? Boggle? Bilderberg gets scant coverage partly because of its connections to the transatlantic intelligence community. The fact that the security agencies are as embedded in this process as they are means that it will never be, of course, subject to the sort of scrutiny that would be necessary if you had a government that was truly representative of the people and agencies within that government that were there to protect your rights and investigate potential corruption and centralising elitist forces. It's never going to happen. You'll never get to scrutinise or even understand what happens in this context. And even though probably there are other layers of conference and conflab that's beyond even this, that we don't even hear about. We don't even hear about their existence. It's pretty clear from this lineup, from the topics that they're discussing, that it will have an impact on the way that you live your life. And it's not an impact that you can resist, oppose, or even be engaged in a discourse with. When constructing a counter-argument to the way that power operates in your life now, I think it's important to remember what Edward Snowden said about the worst conspiracies being in plain sight. Here are the most powerful people in the world, some of the most powerful security agencies, financial interests, getting together to discuss subjects like global realignment, the Ukraine, potentially cryptocurrencies and alternative means of transaction. You don't need to get into the owls and the lizards and the human sacrifices. The fact is this is what power's doing that you can observe. So if that's what's visible, yeah, I imagine there is other stuff that goes on, but there's, in a way, no point getting too caught up in that, because it oddly makes the people that talk about it look ridiculous rather than focusing in on what's observable. Look, these are observable transactional spaces where the heads of GlaxoSmithKline and Pfizer are meeting up without press scrutiny with Wall Street investors. What do you imagine that they're doing in there, like painting each other's nails and giggling and singing songs from Greece? They're not, are they? They're saying, well, this would be helpful and this kind of legislation would be helpful in order, and why don't we put this person in this position? You know, I'm obviously being reductive, but they're not sat there like, you know, picking each other's spots. Formed in the mid-50s as a joint project of British and US intelligence, the conference has kept its cards so close to its chest that the world's press has given up trying to get a glimpse of them. Even those diligent investigators at CNN and MSNBC and Fox have given up trying to investigate the corporate skullduggery that goes on at Bilderberg. Perhaps in the 1950s, when you had all the President Men's style investigative journalists trying to understand what was going on and feeling like they were representatives of the people against the establishment, maybe then they were trying to get a glimpse. Now they're not trying to get a glimpse out. They're inside, wearing the hoods and that. This year's conference lineup, led by the CIA head William Burns, reflects those roots. Burns, excellent. Burns is a former US ambassador to Russia and was elected to Bilderberg's steering committee just a few months before Joe Biden gave him the job, whereupon he discreetly resigned his seat. In a sense, like, even that one person's movement through several jobs shows you, without any need for the robes or the pentagrams or the blood sacrifice or any of that, look, there's one guy heading up the CIA, being at the Bilderberg Group, getting from jobs by Joe Biden. There they are. 4 other active intelligence chiefs are attending. The head of the UK Government Communication Headquarters, the director of France's External Intelligence Agency, DGSE, the leader of the US Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, and Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Almost every aspect of that lineup is cause for inquiry and question. What we've learned in the last 10, 15 years about cyber spying, data capture, the relationships between big tech and big business and government. There they all are, just meeting up, and have been for 70 odd years. You can track the way the world's changing, the way that power is centralizing, the way that democracy is declining, the way that ordinary people are being turned against one another and distracted, along with these kind of opportunistic conferences, these chances to create and execute a global agenda. Former spy chiefs at the talk include David Petraeus, CIA, and Sir John Sawyers, MI6, now a board member of Bilderberg and British Petroleum. So one person is the former head of MI6, a board member at Bilderberg and BP. What else do you want on your CV? An internship at Pfizer? And of course, holding court at the hotel bar will be Klaus Schwab's mentor, Henry Kissinger, who has been attending Bilderberg's since 1957. The Prince of Realpolitik has been the ideological godfather of Bilderberg for as long as anyone can remember, and he's recently co-authored a book, The Age of AI, with Bilderberg steering committee member Eric Schmidt, the former head of Google, and this year's Washington conference is notably rammed with AI luminaries. Bilderberg knows that however the global realignments play out and whatever a reset global financial system looks like, the shape of the world will be determined by big tech. And if the end game is continuity of government, as the agenda suggests, the continuity will be powered by AI. Whatever billionaire ends up making the software that runs the world, Bilderberg aims to make damn sure that it has its hand on the mouse. When I think about the agenda of this channel, Partly what we're trying to engage in is the creation of a set of tools and a conversation between us where we start to understand the way that power operates, and also new ways of framing things that might otherwise be seen as ridiculous and conspiratorial. When you hear that Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger and Klaus Schwab and people that run Google and people that have interests in BP and MI6 and CIA are all meeting up, I think it really undermines the idea that to talk about globalist agenda and global elites running the world is somehow ridiculous, preposterous, juvenile, stupid. It's happening. It's evidently happening. This is the venue and this is the agenda. These are the things that get discussed at the Bilderberg Group. Geopolitical realignment, that means how to run the world and reorder global power. NATO challenges, that means how are we going to maximize the opportunities that come from the war in Ukraine. China, those bastards. Indo-Pacific realignment, don't forget about them. There's resources over there too. Sino-US tech competition, we can't let China win. TikTok's brilliant. Russia, bastards. In a sense, it's like, this is what we want to do, and here are the obstacles to it. China, obstacle. Russia, obstacle. Continuity of government and economy. We need to continue governing everything, particularly the economy. Disruption of the global financial system. We cannot allow cryptocurrency to do this. Disinformation. Damn you, Joe Rogan. Fragmentation of democratic societies. Well, you know, you're bloody causing it. Trade and deglobalization. That's the last thing any of us need. We've got to globalize things, and we'll be in charge of trade. And finally, as an afterthought, Ukraine. People have got to have some sort of flag to stick in their windows. So there you are, the OG globalist conference when Klaus Schwab was a little boy in probably too short lederhosen, stroking a kitten. The Bilderberg, the OG, were getting together in old school James Bond Aston Martins and meeting up in ski resorts to discuss the future that is now the present that you're living in. What do you think they're talking about now with the CIA, MI6, French Secret Services, tech billionaires, geniuses that run all sorts of companies? Are they just talking about how to improve your life, the lives of disenfranchised people over the world? Are they interested in solving the real problems that billions of people face daily? Or do you imagine that they're talking about the continued ossification of power and preventing any conversation that could diminish, interrupt, or even slow down the relentless march to a kind of globalist singularity? I think those kind of things, having looked at their agenda, might come up. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you had enough of conferences of this nature? Would you like to see alternative conferences, a different way of communicating, the views of ordinary people represented? If so, you can come to that thing that I'm doing. There's a link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. If you don't subscribe yet, subscribe now. Join up to my mailing list to hear what I'm doing. And most importantly of all, please stay free.